Hey guys, it's Mike from Fieldcraft Survival. Hey, I'm here with Hannah, who's going to be our student today. How are you doing, Hannah?
Good.
Yeah, so Hannah is an intermediate, basic to intermediate shooter, which typically is most people in civilian life. You know, they come out, you get some basic fundamentals of safety, of marksmanship. Your typical flat range shooter, you go to a range, you go through 50 rounds. You could do it, and you could do it without shooting or hurting yourself. So what we want to do is build a base of knowledge utilizing what she already knows in safety and gun handling, and then ramp it up and increase that based on really her aptitude or understanding of what we're teaching. So today we're teaching gunfighting, and we're going over everything by the book. Starting out, the first thing we need to understand is how to properly clear a weapon system. And you know, Hannah hasn't really learned this technique. We haven't really talked about it, so she's learning it from scratch, which is a good thing. We want to build these habits from scratch, and believe it or not, like people who have zero training, they have zero bad habits as well. So it's a good base that we're going into. So the first thing we're going to is clearing a weapon system. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about clearing a weapon system. You know, when we clear a weapon system, we have to do 3 primary checks. The 3 primary checks are to check the breech or the barrel to make sure there's not a round sitting in the barrel, right? The second check is to make sure the source of feed or the magazine is not inserted in the gun, which is really the most common mistake that's made in law enforcement and civilian practices with guns. Is the source of feed's in there, they clear the chamber, it looks like it's clear, but then they drop the slide, it goes forward, and they chamber around, and they wind up having an accidental discharge. The third and final check is we're checking the bolt face to ensure there's not a round sitting on the bolt face. A lot of people ask, like, why would you check the bolt face? Because you could see the bolt face. But a bolt face in some guns are receded, and you can't see it. So the bullet could be sitting on the bolt face. You won't see it, and then you wind up loading a hot round, okay? So the first thing is we're pointing it off in a safe direction. I'm going to take my gun out. I'm going to demonstrate it for you, and then you're going to do the same exact thing. So we treat all handguns or all weapon systems as if they're already loaded. So I'm going to pull out my gun and point it in a safe direction. A lot of people are intimidated in working in confined spaces with firearms. And what I'll tell you is when you're working side by side somebody, having control of that weapon system in your field of view is imperative. It's very important. A lot of people like to do stuff down here. Well, your eyes are up here and your hands down here. You can't see this. So it's better to have it in your workspace. We're on a flat range, obviously, so there's nobody beyond my barrel. But if you're in a confined space, you could take the gun, go high, and that's a safe spot. Or you can go low in the ground, and that's also a safe spot. In this case, we'll work it right here. So in this pistol, it's actually a Glock. The slide reciprocates, and that's how the cycle of operation is. The first thing I want to do is lock the slide to the rear using the slide catch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the slide to the rear, lock the slide catch by pushing up or putting upwards pressure, which locks the slide, which gives me an open chamber. Now on this side, as you can see, I got the chamber open, and I'm going to do my 3-point inspection. My 3-point inspection takes place up in my field of view. So I'm going to look, and I'm literally going to physically say 1, right, which is the chamber. 2, which is the source of feed. And 3, which is the bolt face. A lot of people get disconnected because they get stressed out from their conscious ability to read and manage. What they'll do is it's called checking the block. They'll look at the gun and go, yeah, I'm good. Well, there's a difference between seeing and actually observing, right? Seeing, you're scanning, it's a quick scan, and you're losing information. If you're observing, you're physically looking with your eyes and taking in the information more deliberately. So in this case, 1, chamber, 2, source of feed, 3, bolt face. The gun's clear. Now, if I was going to hand this gun off to Hannah, what I'd do is I put the barrel down, grab it by the barrel, because it's a safe gun, clear gun, and I would hand it to her just like this, okay? In this case, I'm not going to hand it to her. I'm going to go ahead and do my 3-point check, let the slide go forward. You can let the slide go forward 2 ways. You could take the front end of the gun and rack the slide by pulling back on it and letting go. Or you could take the rear of the gun overhand, pulling back, and then letting it go. Once it's clear, it's good, I'm going to go ahead and stow it. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with you, Hannah. So go ahead and take the gun out. Go ahead, lock the slide to the rear. Good. Do a 3-point check. First, you're checking the chamber, you're checking the source of feed, and then you're checking the bolt face. Is everything good? Lock this or rack the slide forward. Go ahead, present the gun, get a free rep, and go ahead and holster. Good job. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to hand you the gun, and then you're going to do a 3-point check on the gun, and then hand it back to me, okay? All right, so drawing out my gun, locking the slide to the rear, 3-point check, barrel, source of feed, bolt face. Slide forward. When I hand you a gun, what I'm always going to do is lock the slide to the rear and 3-point check it as a courtesy. So you see me observing me do it, and then I'm going to hand it to you, and then you're going to do the same thing, okay? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hand you the gun. Go ahead, 3-point check it. Good. Slide forward. Good. Present the gun. All right, now 3-point check it again. 1, 2, 3. Good. And then hand me the gun. Good. Hey, when we get hot on the range, we just talked about the 3-point check for safety and for clearing a gun. The same thing, we want to lock the slide to the rear. We want to ensure there's nothing inside the weapon system before we load it with a fresh magazine. We want to load the magazine. We want to get our free rep by presenting the gun on a flat range and then putting it away. A lot of people have beef with admin reloads, but the fact of the matter that an admin reload exists, and it exists based on the time constraint. You have plenty of time, there's no rush. You could do a whole bunch of checks on that gun to ensure that it's set up, and that's right before you get your EDC on. That's right before you get on a range and get hot. That's right before you get hot on a competition, or your home defense, the gun sitting beside your nightstand. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with Hannah, and I'm going to teach her by the numbers. We're going to go through it. I'm going to demonstrate that for her, and then she's going to do it herself. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is, again, we're drawing the gun, confined workspace. It's okay. Get used to working in confined spaces with pistols. I'm going to lock the slide to the rear, 3-point check it. We're going to look at the barrel, the source of feed, and the bolt face, ensure it's clear. When it's clear, I'm keeping the gun in this imaginary box, right? If I'm manipulating the gun right to left, left to right, I want to keep it up here in my field of view because I could see and observe if there's anything impeding the cycle of operation for this pistol. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is take out my magazine that I'm going to load with, and I'm going to inspect the magazine. The inspection is just a simple check. I'm literally looking at the magazine to ensure it's got the proper amount of rounds. Right? I'm going to turn the gun sideways. When I turn the gun sideways, the only thing I want to see is I want to see the inside of the magwell, because we're visual learners, right? So if I see something with my eyes and then I point and push my body to it, I'm going to hit it the first time, right? I'm looking at it like this. If it's turned this way and I'm blindly trying to get into it, it's not going to work. But if I see it, my finger immediately goes there. So there's a way to hold a magazine. One, I want to keep the base plate in my palm, and my finger, my first finger, what is this called, a forefinger? My number one finger that's aligned with the magazine well. This is the well, right? So I take it, I point it in the well, and I seat the magazine completely. When I seat it, I just seat it with pressure. I don't have to tap on it, rack on it. I seat it with pressure. I'll hear the click, and if you don't hear the click, you could pull on it during an admin reload. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the gun upright and look down. As you could see brass there, right? That's a bullet, right? What I'm doing is I'm confirming with my eyes that there's a round set up on the magazine ready to go in the chamber. I also turn the gun this way to ensure the magazine's properly seated, because if it wasn't, it would just drop out, right? Gravity is going to feed that magazine to the dirt. But I turn it, it's good to go. I look down. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chamber the round in the gun. I'm going to let the slide go forward. When we're chambering a round, you don't want to let this go slowly. You want to allow it to manually go forward using the spring and rod that's inside the gun like it typically would function. So what I'm going to do is hand over, and then I'm going to let it ride forward. Now the gun's loaded. I'm going to present the gun, get my free rep of presentation looking down the sights, and then I'm going to simply put the gun away. All right? And now it's good to go. Now, if I'm going to do an unload, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it in reverse, right? I'm taking the gun out of the holster, pointing it in a safe direction, get my free rep if I can. I'm dropping the magazine or source of feed. I'm putting away the magazine. I'm taking the gun and I'm pulling the slide back to the rear. A lot of people are brass catchers, right? They want to pop the round and catch it like they do in the movies or IPSC shooters do. Don't do it. It's not worth it, especially in an environment where there's other people in the vicinity of where you're at. So I'm going to lock the slide to the rear, right? The bullet's going to fall out. The bullet fell out, but is the bullet really gone? Did I see it? If I didn't, you're always checking. That's why it's imperative that you check this 3-point check. I'm looking down at the barrel, looking down at the source of feed. I'm looking at the bolt face. Now the gun's clear. Let the slide go forward, present the gun, and then put it away. Pretty easy, huh? Okay, let's have you try it. All right. So the first thing you're gonna do is, you're gonna draw it out. You're gonna bring it up in your workspace. You're gonna lock the slide to the rear. Right? You're gonna do your 3-point check. Good. Now you're gonna hold it up in your workspace, turning the mag well out slightly, and then you're gonna grab your magazine. What I like to do is, we're talking about loading a magazine. As somebody who's never done it before, especially loading this technique, is to walk them through it. So one, I'm taking my palm and I'm running the palm with a base plate. That's gonna sit in your palm. And this, your first finger is gonna run along the bullet side of the magazine, right? So if she would have pulled it out, she would have took it like this and pulled it straight like deer. Like some people call this a beer can grip. So it's here to here, right? That's the most economic movement, right? So she's pulling it here, and she's looking at the mag well as it's turned, and she's pushing it straight into the magazine well. Go ahead. And then she's seating it. It's properly seated because she felt the palm pressure, but during an ab and reload, she might pull on it just a little bit to ensure it's good. All right, the next thing you're gonna do is you turn the gun over and look at the brass side. So you see the brass, right? So now you're gonna take your hand over it and you're gonna chamber the round, letting it manually go forward. Exactly. Always get a free presentation, present the gun. Good. Now put the gun away loaded. Good job. All right, guys, so the first thing we're talking about in the fundamentals of gunfighting is stance. You know, typically we like to debunk a lot of myths when we're doing gunfighting classes because a lot of people are taught different ways for different reasons. Typically, the way we teach in law enforcement, the way we teach in defense tactics is based on safety protocol. So if I'm teaching you a certain technique, it might not be based on reality. It actually might be based on the fact that you're limited or constrained by the actual range that you're shooting on. So some of the techniques that have been taught in training in special operations in the military is you want to get in a fighting stance when you're in a gunfight. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for it. One of the reasons is stability. They say that, hey, if you're shooting a rifle or you're shooting a pistol, you need to have a stable platform. And they gauge a stable platform with the way your feet are standing. So a typical fighting stance might be I'd lower my posture or lower my stance and flex my knees and then get into aggressive stance. And there's this level of aggression they want you to get in because, you know, speed, surprise, and violence of action are the fundamentals of close quarters battle. Another reason might be that if you're wearing body armor or plates, that you want to be squared up on a target. So I want to have my plates squared up on the bad guys, and so I want my body position to reduce a little bit to get in that stance, but always be squared up. The reality is, in stances, you don't have the opportunity always in an imminent gunfight to be able to get into a stance. So if you look at a gunfight as a measure of speed and accuracy, well, am I going to take the time to get down into a different position in order to address a threat? Or am I just going to do the best I can and get that gun, drive it to the threat, and start doing work? So the understanding is that all the stuff that we're talking about is basic level of skills. The advancement of any of this training is taking that basic box that we talk about and replicating it in different environments. So for example, professional shooters, for example, shoot upright and erect because shooting is a very visual game. If I'm looking with my eyes open as a predator who has his eyes open, who's, you know, feeding himself with all that information, I'm standing erect and I'm standing tall. Now, you might be in a gunfight walking through a threshold. You might be in a gunfight sitting in your car. You might be in a gunfight from your bed laying on your butt. So we want to be prepared to do all those things. You know, closing out with stance, the reason we do that is to demonstrate that you could be in an unstable position, really in any position. And when you're training, you got to train every single alternate position you can, because you never know what position you're going to shoot from. We develop the fundamentals of gunfighting in a box, meaning it is the grip, the alignment, the trigger control, and your stance, and how you deliver this box. You could be on your side underneath a car, you could be walking through a threshold, hell, you could be climbing a ladder, getting on a rooftop. You never know when you're going to have to draw your gun and go to work. So we want to drive the point home through stance that it's not about really demonstrating a stance that slows you down. It's about demonstrating a stance that the immediate action is you go to your gun, whether it's out or it's in a draw configuration, and you start to work because you have no time and you have nothing but an imminent threat that presents itself in front of you. You have to get on it, and it has to happen fast.